Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're looking at the Zero Tolerance 0707, and this is a really interesting knife from Zero Tolerance. It may not be the exact knife that many ZT fans are going to be interested in, although maybe more recent fans, it probably will, and it may be the perfect knife for you if you're a fan of sort of the very lightweight, zero space in pocket taken up sort of movement that's been going on. Spyderco's got a bunch of lightweight models. The Benchmade bug out was sort of the main one that kind of started pushing this very lightweight trend. And perhaps we could call this Zero Tolerance's offering to the bug out, because it may even be lighter than the bug out, which is pretty impressive. So that's one of the standout features here. So let's go ahead and get to that. There are a couple of other places where this departs from your typical ZT stuff, although let me say before we move on that this does fit very well within its family. So this is from the 700 family, and it's sharing the blade that comes on, of course, the 0777 is crazy, but the 0770, which was a very, very popular model, the bare knuckle, the link, there are a number of ZTs that sort of follow in this line, and this does fit that sort of family quite well. But having said all that, let's get to size and weight, because this is pretty cool. So 8¼ inches overall. In fact, just a hair under that, a little more than 3½ inches of blade. And I mean like a 16th over, not even a 16th, I don't think. 4 11/16 on the handle length. So that's the closed length in your pocket. All right, 3¾ inches of grip area. So very, very generous. Even if you have large hands, this knife is going to work really, really well for you. And of course, the standout number here is 2.3 ounces. 2.3 ounces is ridiculous for a knife of this size. And here's where I think this really, really shines and is probably the most impressive feature to me. This knife carries as if it's not even there, but normally when you get a knife that's that lightweight, it's not very confidence inspiring, and you don't really feel good about what this knife could do. And this knife really shines in that regard, because I feel like this is a full capability folding knife. I don't feel like, man, if I'm going to do something a little bit harder, I better not have this. Where with a lot of the really lightweight stuff, especially the Benchmade bug out, it feels so chintzy to me that it really, really bothers me. This doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel chintzy. It doesn't feel plasticky. It feels really substantial in hand and really capable, which to me is a very, very welcome departure from the sense that these super lightweight knives normally give me. And so from that regard, this is one of the best of the lightweight knives out there. Not only that, but it's also full size, which, if you have bigger hands, if you like a larger knife the way I do, or if you're regularly cutting things that require a little more cutting edge, a lot of those super lightweight knives are just not going to work for you. Where this, not only, is it super lightweight and easy to carry, but it's very capable. And I might add, a pretty stinking impressive knife as well, just from an aesthetic standpoint. So we'll get to that again in a couple of minutes. Before we do, so the main point here under size and weight is, yeah, this is really impressive. It's very lightweight, and yet it doesn't feel cheap. In fact, it feels substantial and comfortable and rather confidence inspiring in hand, which is a big difference between it and a lot of the lighter weight stuff. Moving on to this blade. Again, the blade is, now this is not what I would call a heavy duty, tough, hard use blade. It's pretty thin blade stock, pretty thin behind the edge, very fine point. So don't be dropping this thing. You'll break that tip off. And I've had that experience. I had someone ask me, I make this comment in a lot of videos. Someone said, have you ever actually broken the tip off a knife? Because they were sort of suggesting, this is not a real thing that happens. But yes, I have. I've had knives sent to me to be repaired that have a broken tip. And one of the first militaries I had, I dropped it on the carpeted floor in here. It's carpet over concrete, and the tip stabbed through the carpet, hit the concrete, and broke. So yeah, a very fine tip can break. And in my case, it even happened on a carpeted floor. So you got to kind of be aware of that. So all I was saying is, with a fine tip, you just got to be a little bit careful and don't drop it. Continuing with this blade, we've got a flat grind, really nice stonewash finish, top swedge up here. I've got to say, overall, this blade is pretty nice. Now, as I've said, this is not what I'd call a hard use knife. It's not really what I'd call a tactical knife, so it's not going to deliver that aspect that we look for from ZT. But in terms of a functional cutting tool, this is very, very good. So yeah, I like this blade a lot, and I like this design. I like the blade shape on this and all of the knives that fit into this family. And there, as I said, there's a bunch of them from Kershaw and Zero Tolerance. So that, I've got to say, is really, really nice. And probably my two favorite features are the size, weight, and the blade. Moving on to the action, that's where it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, this is not a knife that's going to drop shut for you, and that's the weird thing. So normally, and I've said this in videos, normally I'll be reviewing a ZT and I'd be like, it has ZT action, right? Which means it's smooth, it's fast, it drops shut, very satisfying high-end titanium frame lock action. Okay, but this does not do that. In fact, right there, it encounters the detent ball, and I've got to push it past. And once I push it past, there's constant pressure applied to this blade by that dual detent system. So it's not going to drop shut. And I actually have cleaned this up and oiled both the pivot and the detent tracks to try and smooth that up a little bit. And it did make a minor difference, but this is not a knife that's going to drop shot for you. And in fact, I went out and asked a few other reviewers, and all of them reported the same thing. This is not a drop shot knife, which it's a feature of the knife. Okay, you're not going to get one or you're very unlikely, I suppose, to get one that's going to drop shut. Now, in terms of deployment, very enjoyable, very snappy detent. That's what we're used to seeing from ZT. But when you're closing the knife, it's going to take some assistance. So I take my finger here, and you can just kind of give it a smack down, and it will fall into place. The way that works, let's see if I can show you here. You can see them both there. So see the two detent balls. On this side, there's a leaf spring inserted into the carbon fiber with a detent ball on it so that the detent is independent of the lock. The lock has a detent ball on it as well. It's there so that it rides smoothly on the blade. It doesn't have a detent hole at all, and I can show you this. If you watch this spot right here, okay, watch and you'll see that it doesn't move when I close the blade. Okay, so it is not falling into a detent hole on this side. It's only the inserted leaf spring detent ball on the other side that's actually doing anything. The only thing that the detent on the lock side, the detent ball, I should say, on the lock side is doing is providing a smoother surface for the blade to ride on. All right. Now, I suppose if you wanted to play with this, you could take everything apart, take that insert out, and try to reduce the tension on that leaf spring. I wouldn't recommend you doing that because you may end up creating a knife that has no detent at all, which is going to be a real problem. All right, but that would be about the only way that I could see of turning this into a knife that drops shut. Now, we've got to ask the question, does that ruin the knife? And I suspect for some ZT buyers, it would, right? From a practical standpoint, the knife opens and closes when I want it to, but it is a little disappointing to get a zero tolerance that doesn't have zero tolerance action, or the action that we've come to expect and associate with zero tolerance. Apart from that, okay, so that dual detent system is a different system, and it provides a very different type of action. Aside from that, everything else is very, very good. So it is on bearings. It does have a stainless steel lock bar insert. The lock bar is very accessible and comfortable. The flipper tab has that nice jimping on it. Again, very accessible, very fast. Okay, so the action is very good if you're measuring it from the deployment side primarily. If you move over and start looking for it to drop shut, it's just not going to do that. It's smooth. It feels like quality. Okay, certainly feels like something that isn't, cheap and crappy, but it's not going to drop shut. All right, so I wanted to make sure that was clear, and I wanted to make sure we had that little discussion about that dual detent system, because that is a different way of doing it. Now, I suspect that what they're probably assuming is that what happens when you break that detent, so if under normal use, I kind of shut the knife like this, and when I break that second detent, the blade does end up kind of shooting down closed, because it's essentially like it's almost like you've got a detent on the close as well as the open. All right. So there you go, guys. That's my discussion of the action. And I get that that's going to put some people off. And I don't know, over a little bit of time, over actually a fairly good bit of time that I've been using and carrying this, I don't really mind. Okay. I've found that I really enjoy this knife, mostly because it offers me a full size, very substantial, very confidence inspiring knife in such an insanely low weight that I can carry this in a pair of track pants or shorts or whatever while I'm around the house, not wearing pajama pants. You can still carry this knife. It's really, really fantastic from that perspective. Okay, so moving on from the action, we've beat that horse enough. Let's move on to the handle. And again, I've already stated my main thing that it matters to me about the handle. This is a pretty comfortable knife and it feels pretty substantial even though it's extremely lightweight. That to me is very important. We do have this milled out space that is the same as what they did on the 0308. We talked about this. I actually kind of like the look of it. If you don't like the look of it, that's a different thing altogether. But I don't mind this on this or the 308. In fact, I'm going to go on record and say both of those ZT offerings for this year I like quite a bit. And I like them at least as much, if not more, than a lot of the stuff that ZT has done recently. I just think both of them are really, really cool offerings. Okay, so we've got this opening. We've got very nicely milled titanium here that does provide a lot of comfort. So this milling does add traction and it does, soften those edges. So this feels pretty nice in hand. The very minimal pocket clip is a huge win. I love this to death, and it doesn't give any hot spots. It's also movable. So the way you'd have to take this out, okay, notice how, there we go, that back standoff here is what's holding this clip in place. You'd have to loosen that off, move the clip, and tighten it back up in order to switch that clip from one side to the other. I do love that very minimal clip though, for sure. Decorative pivot here, which, it adds an interesting flair to the knife. I don't mind it. I don't know if it adds a whole lot, and I don't think I would dislike the knife if this was done differently, but the way it's done is absolutely fine, and it does, add some visual interest along with the milling. Overall, I think the design of this is quite attractive. I like the fact they've kind of carried this milling, this cutout to the back of the knife as well. I find the blade flows nicely with the handle. Overall, I like the look of this knife quite a lot. I like the feel in hand. I like the lightweight construction. I guess I should point that out. There's no liner of any kind on the carbon fiber side, which is great. I mean, carbon fiber is light and strong. That's why you go with that option. So to me, it doesn't make sense to add a steel liner under carbon fiber because it defeats the purpose of that particular material. So there you go, guys. That's my talk about the handle. Oh, T6 Torx down here. That's not my favorite, but it is a very light, very small knife. So it's kind of expected to see some pretty small, light screws there. Okay. So yeah. I like the design? I like the feel in hand. It's not, it's not a big hand filling handle. And I don't think anybody's expecting that. All right. So let's get to some comparisons. I know people kind of like that portion of the video. I've got a couple of knives that for me have been filling the same role, and I'll do those first before I roll in, some knives that you may be more familiar with. So first off, the Kaiser carbon fiber bag letter is very similar. Okay, it's slim, it's long, over 8 inches in length, weighs only 0.2 ounces more. So this is 2.5 ounces, this is 2.3 ounces. I think I asked if there was another 2.5 ounce knife out there, and this would be the main one, and it does beat it. Okay, so if you're looking for something like this high-end interesting knife that is almost non-existent in pocket, the bag letter might be a good choice for you, the carbon fiber. You can go over to White Mountain Knives, by the way. I think they still have some in stock, but I can't be 100% sure on that. The other knife I've got for you is the Stinger. So this is the other knife that I've been carrying to be sort of a lightweight option. Really, really nice knife. I haven't reviewed it yet, but I've been enjoying this a lot. The big difference, of course, is the size. So I much prefer the size here to here. This also weighs in at 2.5 ounces, so a little bit heavier, even though it's way, way small, way, way smaller. By the way, Ferrum Forge Stinger, check out channel sponsors, by the way, for both this knife and this knife. I'll put links to White Mountain Knives and Southern Edge Knife Works. Let's grab a couple of other comparisons. I want to kind of, first let's just throw in some familiar stuff. There is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. All right, another decent option for a very capable but lightweight knife. Another knife that this puts me in mind of, and perhaps is going to be a little bit more of a workhorse for you, not perhaps, but will be, the Cold Steel American Lawmen. This is a, they're not as light. This is like half the weight of this, which is pretty impressive. But if you want something that's quite light, carries very easily, you don't really notice you have it in your pocket, this is a good option. It's going to cost you quite a bit less as well. Let's throw in some more standard fare titanium frame locks. First of all, the Inkosi. I won't keep this one. These are quite different, okay? But I will say this. The thing that's similar to me about these two is they're interesting for different reasons. All right, typically you're going to buy a ZT because you want that smooth action, you want the drop shot, you want the snappy deployment. Okay, you're not buying a Chris Reeve for those things. All right, it does have very enjoyable action, but it's very different action than bearings. All right, let's grab a couple of bearing flippers that are going to be more in keeping with ZT. So this steel will is, I would say this is like steel will's shot over the bow at ZT. It's got a lot of ZT features. It's a hard use, tough, well-built knife, bearing deployment, great action, titanium frame lock. Okay, this is more what you would expect from a zero tolerance. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because these are, again, quite different. The other knife that I'll show you that would be, again, more like a traditional ZT would be the Riat Torrent. Bigger, heavy, bulkier, sort of a hard use style knife with some higher end features. Okay, so what do I think of this knife overall? Do I like it? Do I hate it? Do I recommend it? First of all, let me say, if you're used to something like this and that's what you're looking for from ZT, then no. But if you want something lightweight, if you want something that's still well made, if you want something that's confidence inspiring and doesn't feel like a toy, this is a great option. Yes, it's going to cost you a little more. You're getting those high-end materials. You're getting that ZT manufacturing. But this is really, really a cool knife. And I could absolutely see this being the perfect EDC for a lot of people and being the kind of knife that would draw maybe people who don't like the bigger, bulkier stuff to ZT and give them something that they can also appreciate. So yeah, huge win, I think, from Zero Tolerance. I think they've done a great job here. A couple little hiccups that we talked about along the way that I wasn't in love with. And I think this knife would have worked fine without the double detent system. I really do. And it would have, given it that typical ZT feel that many of us have come to expect. All right, so there you go. That's my take on the Zero Tolerance 0707. Pretty cool offering from ZT, one that I have enjoyed an awful lot, and I suspect many of you will too, but some of you definitely won't. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out those channel sponsors. We will talk to you soon.